Boise, Idaho just ranked number 2 in the entire country for the best places to live. Let's talk about why that might not be true and why for some of you it is definitely the number 2 place to live in the entire country. The U.S. News World Report, whose primary goal as a company is to rank different sectors and is best known for ranking hospitals and colleges, but also has a major sector focused in the finances and the real estate market, has just ranked Boise as the second best city in the entire country to live. They give a number of insights on Boise that we're going to talk about, but they don't give you much information on each of those topics. So we're going to give you more insights, see if they are actually correct, and answer the question of Boise being the number 2 city in the entire country. My name is Brady Fagel and I am a lifelong Boise local. So I can give you an honest answer, a small hint. I don't know if they're actually correct, but we will talk about that. And I'm also a real estate agent and I make these videos every week to provide you as much information as possible. So if you find value in this, subscribe to the channel. And if you want more details on helping you move to Boise, call or text me anytime. Now back to what you came for. The U.S. News article touches on a number of points: what it is like to live in Boise, the cost of living, demographics, the things to do, schools, and crime. We're going to start off with the cost of living. They mention that living in Boise is somewhat pricey, but when comparing it to other metro areas like Portland or Seattle, it is much cheaper. They also mention the lower taxes in Idaho with an income tax rate from 1 to 7% and then the sales tax of 6%. And then they ended off by mentioning that insurance and energy bills are much lower. They don't go into any detail on that, but that's what we're here for. So first of all, Boise is definitely cheaper than other metro areas on the West Coast. Although the median home price in Boise has risen to around $450,000, that is still substantially cheaper than the $600,000 to $900,000 in the other metro areas along the West Coast. Taxes are also a large cost for all of us and something that of course we can't avoid. But the Idaho income tax and sales tax are cheap, but they are not the cheapest in the entire country, like Florida and Tennessee with a 0% income tax. But what they left out for Idaho was the property taxes. This is something that a lot of people I work with are very surprised by, because if you move to Texas, you can be paying upwards of 5% a year on your property, and especially people looking at debating between Texas and Idaho, or we get some people who move from Texas. That's a huge difference. Idaho is comparable to the other western states at around 0.8% tax rate depending on the area you live in, the valley in Boise. California, Oregon, and Washington are fairly similar to that, with California being around 1% depending on where you live. So Boise doesn't have a significant leg up on these western states, but it does still rank as the 17th cheapest state when it comes to property taxes. And when you consider home prices in California or Seattle, the overall cost is much cheaper here in Boise. The U.S. News article also mentions our monthly energy costs are much lower, but it doesn't go into detail again. I can tell you statistically, Idaho has some of the lowest energy costs in the entire country and ranks as one of the top states. But let's give you some actual numbers. I'll share my actual utility costs and then give you an estimate for the average home in Boise. I live in a 1,400 square foot home and I pay around $100 a month for trash and water. In the summertime, our energy bill is right around $100 a month and gas is around $30. With gas and electricity flip-flopping in the wintertime. So we pay roughly $230 a month for all of our utilities. And this can vary depending on the area you live and the size of your home. But if you live in an area with irrigation, your water bill might be lower. On average, the people pay around $300 to $400 a month for the average 2,000 square foot home in Boise. And so I know that that is definitely a lot cheaper than a lot of other states. People are paying $500, $600, $700 a month. The next major category that they factor in is the job market. They show the median salary of $85,000, which is higher than the national average. And then they show the 3.2% unemployment rate. That is 2% lower than the national average. Other than that, they discuss a short blurb about the history of the logging or the mining and livestock and farming business here, and then how recently we have had a growing technology sector, led by Micron Technologies, the memory chip manufacturer here. They mention how HP has an office, and then Clearwater Analytics, bodybuilding.com, and Cradlepoint are headquartered in Boise. The Micron chip manufacturer that they mention is much larger than I think they give it credit for. It will end up costing around $15 billion by the time it's completed. And then they also don't mention the $800 million Facebook or Meta data center coming into town. It truly is becoming a hub for technology businesses in Boise. And then another thing to note is that the median salary may be higher than the national average, but when you compare it to the home prices, there has been a significant gap created. Home prices have gone up 50% in the last few years, and then salaries have only increased 15% in Boise. So home affordability is less than ideal. And for those of you that work from home and have a great paying job, it isn't a problem. But if you lose your job and you have to find a new job in Boise, it can cause some issues in affording your home later on. Outside of the tech industry, Boise has major healthcare systems that represent a large portion of the jobs here. And so the job market is strong in Boise. They do mention that, but they just don't go into a ton of detail, but it is another big pro of living in Boise. Now, before we get into the schools, crime, and the reality of why Boise might be the #2 city in the country, my name is Brady Fagel again, and as a Boise local and real estate agent, my goal is to provide you with as much information on the Boise area as possible so you can be confident in your decision to relocate, even if that means relocating to another city, not Boise. So whether you're moving in a week or a year, text or call me anytime. I am here to answer any questions you have. Now, the last small thing U.S. News touches on is the school system and then the crime rates. It states that 6 of the high schools in Boise are on their US rankings. My wife is a teacher and I have grown up here my whole life. I can confirm that the city of Boise has some of the best schools in the area, or possibly in Idaho. But I can also tell you that Idaho ranks very low nationwide. We're consistently at the very bottom. So personally, I would say the article exaggerates the schooling here just a touch. But with that said, there are great options. If people want better education for their children, I always suggest they look into the charter and private schools here because we have some amazing options when it comes to the private and charter schools. But just as a whole, and what I've seen growing up and with my wife and other friends that I have in the school system, Idaho's not going to be ranked nearly as high as some of the other major cities in the country. Now, likely the most important part of where you live is just going to be the overall feel. This includes the type of people that live here, the things to do, and the environment and future outlook a city provides. And US News defines Boise as a recreationalist's paradise with a perfect mix of urban, rural, and wild. Both of these are great explanations of Boise, and US News also factors in the low crime rate, which is extremely true. When you compare Boise to other metro areas, it is extremely safe. I have done separate videos completely dedicated to crime, but a good indicator, in my opinion, is the 5 murders that have happened in the last 10 years. That's extremely low when you compare it to other metros. And then another great indication is how people feel and act here, which plays into how the city of Boise feels. I have arguments with my wife about locking doors frequently, and I have conversations with people moving here who have similar stories where one spouse didn't grow up in Boise and is used to locking car doors and house doors all of the time. But if you have grown up here in Boise, you never had to lock your car door. And if you left your garage door open while running errands, it doesn't even cross your mind that you need to worry. Along these same lines, the people here are extremely kind. You will get to know your neighbors in most neighborhoods. People wave and ask you about your day. You will feel like you are in a great community. And for some of you, that won't be a huge surprise, but for some people who move here, it's a noticeable difference from where they came from. And I have mentioned in other videos, but sometimes Californians specifically are not so welcome here. And that may be the initial reaction, but once you get past that initial emotional reaction, everyone here is kind and welcoming, and you're gonna make lots of friends and get along with most people here. There's just that small percentage of bad apples that are angry and mad and not so friendly, but you're gonna find that anywhere. It's just even a smaller percentage in Boise. Now, back to the recreationalist dream that the US News mentioned, Boise does have a lot to do. There is hundreds of miles of hiking trails, mountain biking trails, there is whitewater rafting. You can camp in 100 different areas within 2 hours of Boise. There's fishing and hunting. Lucky Peak Reservoir is 30 minutes away for boating and jet skiing. We have the Boise River to hang out and swim or float. Garden City has a section you can even surf the Boise River. And so there's no shortage of recreational activity in Boise. So to answer the question, yes, Boise is definitely one of the top cities in the entire country. There are some discrepancies with the US News article, and everyone is going to be different. But what really truly matters is the suburb that you choose to move to. Boise is the city itself that they ranked, but Boise has a ton of suburbs and they all offer different pros and cons. So watch this video here where I go through every single suburb in Boise, give you the pros and cons, and then rank them from A to F. Thank you guys for watching. I look forward to meeting you.